morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of your Daily Dose. I did get a request a little while ago, so I am following that up in today's video because there's no new events and we've already covered the ones that are currently out. So for those that are curious, I was asked, is there actually a weapons guide for the game? And I thought, it's pertinent because we, of course, have the newest addition to the Mythic generation weapons, the Dragon's Blade, that has been released. So I figured, why don't we just briefly go through a couple of the weapons that you're likely to come across at different stages in the game, and then potentially where to put them if and when you do acquire them. So first things first, when you do unlock the Treasury, that is where you are going to be able to pull your very first epics and rare weapons. The game will give you a guaranteed one, but essentially this is where everyone starts in the game. Now, excuse me. When you do get the opportunity to pull for these ones, I would recommend saving them. The reason why I would say save them up is purely because there are so many rebate events that will allow you to do these draws and acquire the legendary versions of them. But if you have an itchy finger, go ahead, blow through a couple of those. It does get expensive though if you are thinking about actually buying them for gold. It's probably not worth it in the short term. To be honest with you, you'll be able to get them regardless throughout the game. A lot of the features in the game will give you the option to acquire the selection chest. Do I have the selection chest? They're epic selection chests for weapons. These ones, the shard selection chests, which you can pretty much get from Celebrate Festival and of course Arms Race for the merit badges. So it's not really indicative of you wasting your gold to get it. Save those rebate tokens up and do it with the corresponding rebate events. You'll see that under the event tab when it goes live. Now, I feel like if you wanted me to talk about every single one of these individual epic weapons, it probably would take a very, very long video. And to be completely honest with you, the ones you want to focus on is Zis crossbow, the Black Feather Fan, and Twin Sabers. Everything else is pretty much not really going to be something that you're going to use, even as you transition out of potentially using epic weapons into legendary weapons, which we'll discuss in a second. Realistically speaking, Twin Sabers, Zis crossbow, and Black Feather Fan are the three that you'll probably keep until you, of course, can get all of the legendary weapons. And then I would say you still want to probably just keep them ranked up, because you're probably going to need them when you start to get your mythic weapons, because they'll be at higher star levels than your legendary weapons are, which we'll talk about in a little bit about the co-op system. So that is probably my rule of thumb. Twin Sabers, Zis crossbow, and Black Feather Fan. So Twin Sabers is a offensive weapon. It essentially allows your character to have high crit. Zis crossbow does an additional attack based off the enemies with the lowest HP, and Black Feather Fan has a ability to poison them. But once you've sort of sussed out the game, you'll eventually notice that the thing that they're going to give you is the Dragon's Lance. So Dragon's Lance is probably, I want to say, it's not a great weapon, but it's certainly better than the epic weapons. So when you do get the opportunity to buy these ones for shards early game, you probably will buy this out and just build it. Probably don't waste too much of your gold or energy. There's plenty of opportunities for you to acquire the full weapon elsewhere. But early game, if you're looking to spend a little bit of gold just to unlock it, I completely understand. Dragon's Lance is great on pretty much any offensive-based character. Realistically, it just adds crit and additional attack damage to two random enemies. So not too bad. The next one you'll probably come across is Emerald's Lyra. Where is it? Let me have a look. Probably could just show you from the index here. Might be a little bit easier than going into every individual one. So Emerald's Lyra is essentially one the game will give you for free. This will be the one that they just want to give it to you because it is a healing based weapon. Is it useful? No, not really. Are you going to equip it? Sure you are, because at the end of the day, you really only have the option of epics or legendaries as you start the game out. Throw this on your main character, basically because they're squishy anyway, and they really don't do too much damage early game. So just throw that on there, and it has the opportunity to heal the lowest heroes on your team. Next, moving along, you'll start to work out that Serpent Halberd is the best of the early generations. The game will essentially give you the triple selection chest. I don't know if I've got any available to show you, but this is probably one thing. There you go. So this is something that you'll see a lot. It's quite common to have the triple selection chest, and that'll be in the rebates and the awards and rewards, I should say, that you'll see very early on in the game. So I would strongly focus on the Serpent Halberd, then the Dragon's Lance, and of course, if you already have the shards for the Emerald Lara, maybe go ahead and build that. But basically, the Serpent Halberd is something you want to throw on a DPS, potentially one that has high AoE abilities, because it gives you accuracy. And accuracy is very, very important in this game. It's essentially the most important statistic early game, certainly mid game, and of course late game. There are many ways to counter accuracy, but accuracy, very, very important. If you can't hit the target, you can't do any damage. And this essentially does splash damage. Now, I will say this. As you progress, you're probably going to ask, so what star level do I make my weapons? Firstly, I would recommend unlocking the indexes. I would recommend that because essentially you want to be able to get some of the juicy index scores. And as you go further in the game, you'll have options to get the 4th legendary weapon, which is the Moonfan. So Moonfan is purely for a defensive AoE based character. Essentially, you want to replace the Black Feather Fan, whoever you've got rocking on that, with the Moonfan, because it has a AoE ability. Well, not AoE, it hits, I think, 4 targets, if I'm not mistaken. Is it 4 targets? I want to say it's 4 targets. I have a feeling it's 4 targets. Anyway, this essentially has a chance to silence them, and silence is really, really important at any stage of the game. I generally would stick this on, say, Xiao Xiao, Zhao Yu, for the Shu Nation. Who would I stick this on for? Shu. I mean, in Shu Nation, you could probably get away with Zhuge, because he does do the AoE. I feel like he's good if you're still rocking him. Zhuge Gao, obviously, if you don't have the Mythic Charms, because she does have a AoE ability that hits everyone. And of course, for Warlord, I feel like Yu Ji is probably the best one for this one to be put on early game. And then, of course, if you mythicize him, you might want to stick him with something else. But he runs pretty good with Moonlight Fan because he is a control-based hero. So I would recommend sticking the Divine Weapon on other control-based heroes, because then it has a higher chance of stacking with their already base level of control. If that makes sense, it's almost like a failsafe. Early on, though, the silence chance is pretty low, so it is what it is, right? Everyone understands that, I feel, at some point. Then moving on, you'll pretty much get to the last couple of legendaries, which is the Blue Blade Sword. It is indicative of a Shu Nation character. I feel like this was purely designed for Shu Nation, because when the rage is at 4 or greater, you do additional physical damage. Basically, you want to stick this on any of your Shu Nation characters. If you're not running Shu Nation, I probably would recommend putting this on, I want to say, your 3rd top DPS. If you don't have, DPS or tank. It really doesn't matter too much, because this has the chance to obviously mitigate damage. And when rage is below, you go into defense mode. You could get away with sticking this on your main character if your main character is a little bit squishy. But ideally, this is designed for the Shu Nation because they always have 4+ rage. Certainly, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei are going to shine with the Blue Blade Sword, as you'll see in a second. 7-star Sword is really only designed for those that really have a huge, I guess, base level of attack, because essentially this is it's meant to attack. So the first 2 attacks, physical damage equal to such and such percent, plus max HP to counter hero. So essentially speaking, this gives you crit and damage bonus for 2 rounds, and then when you die, you do a counter attack. I would recommend putting this on your top DPS if you are not running any mythics. If you don't have any other mythic weapons and you manage to pull the 7-star sword, stick this on your top damage dealer. War God Liao Zhang comes to mind. I feel like for potentially Wu, I mean, you could get away with putting this on maybe Garning if you haven't got that, Sun Shi if you're building Sun Shi. I feel like most players are transitioning into the Mythic era. So if you're going to talk about that, Tashi Shi, if you don't have any of the Mythic weapons, he'll work quite well. Dank Stash, pretty much any DPS is going to shine with the 7-star sword. So don't sleep on it. It is very, very important to build this. But I will just run, and I'll recap it real quick. So this is an offensive weapon. Stick that on one of your DPS. Support weapons. So if you have a healer or a support-based character, I would stick that on that. Servant Halberd, probably put this on an AoE-based character. And of course, put this on an AoE-based character. But essentially speaking, this can make someone pretty tanky. Stick this on a squishy or rage prone character. And this one is really just for your DPS as you progress. But of course, we all know that we are now well and truly into the Mythic era, which kind of brings me to where we currently are in terms of gameplay. I would recommend building the Heavenly Sword first. The reason being is because of its ability, Whale Slayer. For those that don't know, it essentially gives your Mythic hero 100 Rage round 1. So essentially you do your ultimate ability and your Rage ability round 1 if you do have that feature unlocked. To be honest though, Dank Stash, if you have Dank Stash and you don't run Heavenly Sword on him, you are really doing your team very, very well. You're ruining your team. You should be running this on Dank Stash. You should be running this on Lu Su. You should be running this on Tashi Shi if you don't have any other weapon for him. I essentially would say you could run this on Zhang Fei, but he already has 100 Rage. Kind of feels like a bit of a waste. You could potentially throw this on Jiang Wei though, because Jiang Wei is quite strong. Guan Yu, of course, if you don't have any mythics, you run this on him, he's going to do some additional damage. Whale Slayer ability is quite interesting because it does have the chance to kill pretty much an invulnerable target, which is huge endgame. It only procs once though, so you'll see it when it procs in battle because the sword will drop from the heavens and pretty much kill the target that's under 25% HP. So this one is pretty much the best weapon in the game that we have. Arguably, we're going to talk about it in a second, the Jade Halberd is really just an offensive-based weapon, but it does have some pretty nifty attack. But I would say this out of all of them would be your first recommended. If you are, of course, running a selection chest, like a triple selection chest, pick the Halberd though, because the Halberd is so hard to get, because of course it is the newest iteration to the game, but eventually you'll have the opportunity to buy it from the Wish shop like most of the other weapons. So if you're stressing, you're like, PB, I don't know how to get the Heaven Sword, start to spend a couple of your shards every single day, grab them from here. I would recommend, of course, doing the Annihilation event. If you're close to getting, the copies and you're like, oh, PB, I don't know if I should get like the Dragon's Blade, probably just finish off your Heavenly Sword. Like if you're 20 shards short, you don't want to wait and you don't want to buy the Wish shop, or you just can't buy the Wish shop ones, finish that off and then start to work on the Dragon's Blade, which kind of leads me into Zis Charm, which is the second mythic. If we're talking about versatility, this is one of the most annoying charms to fight against, and the reason being is because on chance of hit you have the potential to stun the enemy. So this one's actually quite lengthy. You'll have to read through all of its aspects, but Lightning Curse has a 20% chance to deal additional damage, has a 50% chance to stun the target for 1 round, reducing their crit. You'll notice that when you fight other players with Zis Charm and you manage to inflict damage upon them, and then you go, oh crap, why is my team stunned? It's because of Zis Charm. It really does have a pretty versatile ability. Its main aspect though is the third charm, which is the ability to essentially on death either resurrect your character with 20% HP or do counter damage with a cap at 20% max HP. So it could be very frustrating to fight this charm. Zis Charm also has some versatility in Raid Boss. So in Demon's Raid, when you unlock that feature, you essentially will be fighting, I want to say, you'll be fighting like Lu Bu, and of course, you're going to be fighting Dao Shan. So, when the end of round finishes, you actually can resurrect and go one additional round longer. So, it's actually pretty cool if you can manage to get Zis Charm to proc. Although the proc rate of resurrection is particularly low, which is kind of sad. But as you level up any of those mythic and legendary charms, you will notice that the additional abilities increase in their actual appearance. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but it actually just gets better and better. If you're ever curious, you can just go into the skill preview and look at what level they go. They go all the way up to 7-star, and then of course you can read what they do in your own time. But essentially speaking, you want to build these weapons as soon as you can because they are the best weapons in the game. Continue to level up your epics and continue to level up your legendary weapons, because when you do get your mythics, you have a option to co-op. So as you can see, I've already got Zuz's crossbow locked in because obviously I'm still going to have to build that and I can't use the legendaries yet. So you do want to juggle early on, particularly if you are a new whale. You do want to juggle. You don't want to get rid of all of your epic shards. You do want to have a couple of full epic weapons, get them up to 7-star, stick them in your co-op function, and essentially speaking, they boost the power of your weapons, which is fantastic. If you're a little bit confused, you can go between here. I can show you for, I guess, purposes. So you basically get like maybe 100 million power there, like, I don't know, like 1.7. If you want to change it to there, you get more power. It's absolutely up to you. Like, you can juggle between the two. Eventually, though, your legendary weapons will obviously outclass your epic. So, and at that stage, you can just pretty much just go into your section over here, hit your recycle button, go to your divine weapons, and you can pretty much just reset them. So if you want to reset them, that's where you go, and then you get all the shards and resources back, and then you can of course feed them into the weapons. Which kind of leads me into the next conclusion. When you do get an opportunity to run, say, Zis Charm, I recommend sticking this on any mythic. So mythic weapons should always go to mythic characters. That's a rule of thumb. But potentially speaking, if you don't have 3 mythic characters and you have 3 mythic charms for whatever reason, you can just stick that onto what characters work. Zis Charm works on pretty much any support-based character. So Zhuzhgao, perfect. I want to say Sun Luban, perfect. I want to say I wouldn't say Li Lun you kind of would go with Serpent Halberd over a Mythic Charm. I know that sounds odd, but because she really needs to do additional damage, but you could probably get away with it sticking it on, say, Zhao Yu if you don't have anyone. I mean, Yu Ji as well for Warlords if we're going to keep that rule of thumb. It really just needs to be juggled out. But just remember, this is not going to do additional damage for your hero. It's basically going to support them and potentially resurrect them later on. Stick it on your squishiest characters if you have issues there. But of course, everybody wants to know about the Dragon's Blade. So Dragon's Blade is kind of broken. It is by far the most broken weapon to date, because essentially it limits a round 1 damage that the hero takes, meaning you can't be killed. So if you stick this on your top DPS and a DPS that hits multiple targets, it's going to stack up multiple stacks of damage. It does get stronger as the battle continues, and essentially speaking, this is meant for... I feel like this was designed specifically for Zhang Fei. Like, I don't want to say that and get anyone triggered, but I really feel like this weapon was designed for Zhang Fei. I have tested this weapon out, and I've seen this being tested out on the Gen 3 heroes. I would probably say that you could get away with sticking this on Yu Ji. You certainly could try to put this on Lu Su, but Lu Su kind of needs to have the round 1 ultimate. Therefore, I would recommend running the mythic weapon on Lu Su and potentially running this on Tashi Shi so he doesn't die. Just be aware though, you'd need to stick him in slot 5 so he does get his ultimate hatred round 1, so he does do his soul burn ability. But you could definitely trial this Dragon's Blade out on Tashi Shi. Let me know in the comment section below who you run Dragon's Blade on currently. Obviously, Zhang Fei, it is meant for Zhang Fei. Don't even question that. Just stick that on him. He just rocks with it. But I mean, I don't know. Personally, I don't know who this would be really good on. War God kind of stands out for me in because he hits so many. I feel like War God would probably be the best bet. Um, I feel like it would be really busted on him. I'm very curious to test this weapon out on War God Liao Zhang for, of course, the Wei Nation. Let me know in the comment section down below if you enjoy running it on War God, because I know many players do. And of course, keeping him alive, that guaranteed 1 round, is going to be fantastic for your overall damage ability. You could test it on Papa Chu if you really wanted to get him really spicy, but I feel like Mythic Weapon, I feel like if you run the Mythic Sword on Xiao Ji for round 1 ultimate ability, or you run it on Papa Chu for round 1 wreckage with the stun and of course damage immunity, you could probably test that out. I know, right? I'm probably going through so many things, and you're like, what is this guy talking about? I don't have any of these characters. But essentially, that's what I would recommend if you are thinking about doing some of your weapons early game. You need to pretty much just ask the questions. So, like, what hero works best? Who should I run this on? If we're going to look at it from a holistic point of view, Date really does go pretty good with the Mythic Weapon, but you can get away with not running it on him. Obviously, Zhang Fei, you need to run the Halberd on him. For Wei Nation, I probably would say it's so hard to do it because we don't have all the indexes unlocked. But I think Wei Nation, you could probably run the Halberd on this guy. You could get away with running the Mythic Sword on him, and then, of course, Xiao Ji. If I can even find Xiaoji. Why are you always at the back, dude? Come on. You could run potentially Zis Charm on Xiaoji. Shu Nation, we kind of already covered that. Wu Nation, we talked a little bit about that. I feel like Mythic Sword on you for round 1 ultimate is great. You could get away with running the Halberd on Tashi Shi. Lu Su, Tashi Shi, and of course Sun Lu Ban can go with the charms. I feel like you just have to mix and match and ask that question specifically. So in the comment section down below, if you want to know what goes where, probably just ask me there, and I can probably help you out a little bit more. Because again, it really just depends on what you have available, and of course which nation you're playing. But in UG, you could probably get away with running the Halberd on him. He's pretty annoying. I would not recommend running the Halberd on Dank Stash. I would only recommend running the Mythic Sword because, of course, the round 100 ultimate is going to realistically help you out. We can talk a little bit about the Generation 4s when they appear. I assume the Generation 4 Gourd, which is the Fire Gourd, is a support-based weapon. That's the Gen 4 weapon. That'll change some things. That'll be good. I feel like we need some more support-based weapons, so that should be good as well. But like I said, if you have any questions, let us know in the comments section down below. For those that are curious, once you do, of course, unlock the abilities, you will be able to go ahead and refine them. And this is where getting these fire crystals from your Legion is very important. Make sure that you are unlocking your Legion function. So every week, make sure you go into your shop, make sure you have 40k, and you start to buy the fine refinement jades. If you're curious, I would recommend early on to go into your escorts. I probably would buy the weekly shop one. I think I already did. I would buy this one. I would buy one of these per week. The reason being is most of the time you're just going to gamble and never get anything other than the stock standard 3. And it kind of feels like a waste after a while, not going to lie. So I feel like if you are unlocking your mythic and legendary weapons, you should probably start to get the refinement and then go ahead and start to unlock these. So as you can see, look, I don't even have them. I really need to do that. It's really just one of those things that just becomes annoying. If you want, you can hit the refinement button and then do your manual replacements. You can kind of hunt down some of the rare ones. You can try and see if you get lucky and get some legendaries. But the reality is you're going to be wasting so many of these stones. So make sure you're doing your daily events. Make sure you're not skipping that, because at the end of the day, you will probably hurt your account. See, like that, I just refined it and I lost. We'll replace that, sure. I'll lock those. If you want, you can unlock and lock so that you don't actually go through the process of refinement. And then, of course, when you replace them, you swap them out, you lock them, and then you go back in and do it all again. But it is one of those things that you are going to have to grind out. Would I recommend? Would I recommend spending money on these weapons? No. Most of these weapons you'll be able to get from the Annihilation event. When you want to focus on first things first, I will always say go and get your shards. Get your legendary shards before you get your Vanquisher gear set, because you want to be building the base level. You want to be building every single one of these for the index scores. So I'll show you in a second, because I think we should be able to get one. Let's go ahead and build. Let's go build our very first 7-star sword and go into our section here, go into Divine Weapons, Synthesize, boom, and there you go. So you get plus 10% for the synergy. So you should always be working on index stores in your synergy. We managed to get ourselves over 8 billion, so I'm happy with that. But if you do have any questions, like I said, let us know in the comment section down below. We have a link to our Discord where we have a fantastic bunch of people that are willing to answer your questions. Of course, everyone is welcome there, and we are growing in the community function. But like I said, hopefully this helps you out a little bit more in terms of direction. It's hard to do videos and showcase everything, because the reality is I just be chopping and changing between all of the accounts. Weapons aren't important. Weapons are additional things. They do additional things. The main thing that you want to be working on in this game is starring up your characters and getting your beasts. Beasts are what are going to carry you a lot further than your weapons will. Granted, the mythic weapons are a little bit more exciting, and yeah, they should be your focal point. But like I said, it's just an additional layer of support, and it's additional things for you to grind out. So just be aware of that. It's not going to make you super overpowered when you get your first mythic weapon. It's exciting, sure, but the reality is they're just there as a support function. Anyway, I'll get back to my regular daily dose videos after this. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, notification button, and I'll catch you all in the next one.